Let's get right to that. Let's get right to the authorization for the utilization of military force in Syria that you have been calling for about 36 months now. Almost every Republican congressman in Virginia that I've talked to is 100% behind it. Vladimir Putin got authorization in one day from the Politburo. It's taken us all this time. We still don't have any strategy or authorization. What's the plan here?
Well, and John, you're right, and let me connect the idea of the authorization with the strategy. So when the president says to Congress, we need to be involved in war, and so give me an authorization to do that, what Congress does is, we have hearings and we look at the proposed authorization that the president has given us, and we kick the tires on it, we ask tough questions, we challenge them, we usually revise the authorization. This is what happened after the attack of 9/11. President Bush sent an authorization up, but it was debated, and the one that Congress adopted wasn't exactly what he asked for. So you have this back and forth debate in full view of the American public, and then you say, the people's elected representatives, okay, we're going to do this. That hasn't happened here. And so the president started the war in August of 2014 with a legitimate self-defense rationale because U.S. consulate in Erbil was jeopardized by ISIL at the time. But within a couple of weeks, we had protected U.S. property, U.S. personnel, and the president said, okay, now we're fine on defense, let's go on offense against ISIL. That's where, from Jefferson sense, the line has been, when you decide to go on offense, and it's not just imminent self-defense, you got to get an authorization. The president didn't present a draft authorization to Congress until February. That was way too long, took 6 months, but now it's been 8 months since then, and Congress has done virtually nothing. And so what you see is, what is the strategy? In Iraq, it's simpler because the Iraqi government has asked us in. Not that it's going that well, because the Iraqi government has all kinds of challenges, but at least they've asked us in. We're working with the Iraqi military. We're partnering with the Peshmerga, the fighting wing of the Kurds in northern Iraq. Some of it's going well in the Kurdish area, some of it's not going so well, but you can see what the strategy is. But in Syria, the strategy's a joke. We do these one-off actions like try to train 30 people and put them back into a roiling civil war involving millions. No surprise, they get swallowed up in the civil war, killed or captured or defect immediately. The one thing we do that's not an accident, that we do well, is we do provide significant, more than $4 billion of humanitarian aid to Syrian refugees, but you see what's happening. Not only is it a catastrophe inside Syria, and the latest chapter with Russian involvement is going to make it worse, but this migrant crisis of the Syrian refugees spreading out across Western Europe is just heartbreaking, and all of this is because the nations of the West, and the U.S. is, right there, on the fault list with everybody else. We haven't come up with a real strategy about what to do with respect to Syria. What I would do, and it took me a while to come to this conclusion. I wasn't originally a supporter of this when Senator McCain proposed it, but McCain said from the very beginning we should set up a humanitarian zone to enforce the 2 UN Security Council resolutions that have called for cross-border delivery of humanitarian aid into Syria, even without the government's consent. We should set that up on the northern border of Syria with Turkey. It would have to be militarily policed so that people could know that they could go there and be safe. But as challenging as that will be, giving Syrians a place inside their own country where they can go and be protected is far preferable to millions and millions of them feeling that their only hope is to flee and go to other nations.
Senator, what about the argument that says, look, while Assad was there in control, we didn't have this migrant crisis, we didn't have 5 million refugees trying to get out, and now what the Russians are attempting to do is get territory back for Assad. So there's an argument that says, well, if the Russians go in there and they're able to push ISIS out and get Assad's territory back and get the government back whole, then wouldn't the migrants just go back to their homeland?
Well, I do hear people making that argument, but what that ignores is that Assad is dropping barrel bombs on his own people. I mean, this is a civil war inside Syria that has killed now probably about 300,000 people, and it's the atrocities of Assad that has driven most of the Syrian refugees to leave. It's not ISIL. It is really started with the atrocities of Assad against his own people. So the challenge that we've always had with Russia about this, and John, as you know, Syria is the location of the one Russian military base outside the former Soviet Union. So just if the United States only had one base outside the U.S., and it was in a place that was, jeopardized by a war, you can imagine that we would take significant steps to try to protect it.
Sure.
This is Russia's only base. They've watched this instability mount, and they want to prop up Bashar al-Assad. The difference we have with Russia is we look at Assad as a butcher. Mm-hmm. He's butchering his own people, and now we all know there needs to be a next chapter in Syria, some kind of a move to a next chapter of the governance of Syria. There is no way that Assad can be that future leader. I think the important thing to note, though, is the Alawite minority population that he represents. It's about 17% of the population. They have been governing Syria. They've been running the water treatment plants and the trash pickup and all the municipal services. The Alawite population needs to know that they will be part of a next chapter, part of a next government, not slaughtered because they were loyal to Assad, but having a place in the future of the country. I actually think the creation of this humanitarian safe zone in northern Syria will hasten the day when folks will be able to sit down together and find an end to the civil war and the next chapter forward in Syria. But where we differ strongly with Russia is they seem to be willing to be apologists for this dictator who is committing these atrocities against his people, and that's just not something that America is willing to accept.
Let's go to the $500 million that we spent on so-called training Syrian moderate rebels. A lot of us didn't think that was a good idea because we said, it's an oxymoron, they don't exist. $500 million, we trained 5 of them. I mean, where's the accountability, sir, back to the American taxpayer?
Well, it's got to be, and let's put it this way: we allocated that much. We haven't spent all that much, and I think you got a really good question because not only did we allocate that much, there's a second allocation that's going to be coming now to do more of it. We got to throw the brakes on it and say, hold on a second, because you're right. There was an initial training. It was very hard to vet people that we felt were going to use the weapons and not sell them to somebody or do bad things with them, as we saw happen in Libya.
Right.
So we trained and then inserted back into the Syrian civil war in July, August, 30 to 40 trained, and almost immediately they either defected, were killed by an Al-Qaeda terrorist group, the al-Nusra Front, the Jabhat al-Nusra Front. Some, turned their weapons over to al-Nusra. There was a second set of folks inserted into this rolling civil war. But look, the notion that you can train 30 people and put them into a battle of millions in a civil war and they're going to make a difference was highly fanciful. I was over in Turkey in July and met with the U.S. military folks in charge of this mission, and you could basically look in the eyes as they were telling you, and they were basically telling us, well, this is what I've been ordered to do, and I'm going to do my best job at what I've been ordered to do. But, you could tell that they felt like they were Sisyphus trying to roll a boulder uphill in trying to do this and thinking it was going to have a significant mission. So you're right. I think we need to throw the brakes on this particular mission and reassess. But again, this reassessment, it all happens kind of as part of, okay, should the U.S. be at war here, and how should we be using our military assets? I've criticized the president for not really, quickly getting to Congress a clear strategy with an authorization. But my major criticism is of Congress. We have an Article I responsibility. Whether or not the president sends over an authorization, we have an Article I responsibility to be owners of this. And I go to hearing after hearing where I watch members of Congress just sit there like they're fans at a Redskins game criticizing the play calling. Why didn't you run a screen on third down? Mm-hmm. They just are trashing the administration, but they're acting like they're the fans, not the owner. We should have ownership of this, and we don't. And you're just going to see one more twist and turn, one more atrocity, one more strategic catastrophe. U.S. intelligence is saying, well, gosh, we didn't imagine that Russia would do this. Are you kidding me? Mm-hmm. They have one base outside of Russia, and they've been propping up Bashar al-Assad for years. If you can't see that Russia would take extreme steps to protect the one base they have outside the country, hey, you gotta wake up and smell the coffee here.
A lot of us that follow this are surprised it took Putin this long. I
think you're right. I think you're right, John. And I'll tell you the reason that he is now doing this. When I was in the region in July, we were in Gaziantep, Turkey, which is right on the Syrian border, basically, and we were meeting with a lot of Syrians. At that point, everybody understood Assad was really weakening. For a while, he kind of had the momentum, but now Assad is weakening, and what that's been doing is he's sort of pulling back into a smaller and smaller geography, leaving more and more kind of ungoverned, chaotic space. And Russia was seeing that, and other nations, the U.S. was seeing it, Turkey was seeing it, everybody was seeing this happen. And so as that happened, as he was getting weaker and weaker, Russia decided, hey, this is going to descend into chaos that's going to jeopardize our port on the Mediterranean. They have this warm water port on the Mediterranean. It's going to jeopardize that if we don't act. So in some ways, I'm a little surprised something like this didn't happen sooner. But to hear, some in the American kind of intel community say, gosh, we never thought this would happen. Like, are you kidding me?
Exactly. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. Okay, you got to get Republicans off the dime, obviously, on the authorization. I want to get domestically, you backed yesterday the National Defense Authorization Act going against President Obama. You guys got 70, so in the Senate at least, it seems to be veto-proof. President Obama says he's going to veto it. Why?
This is an interesting one, John, and I have a very strong strategic disagreement with the president over this. Although he's right, he's just not right. He's right about an argument he has. He's just not right to use it to veto this bill. So here's the deal: how do we fund defense? How do we fund it? We've been funding it by using this slush fund called the OCO, the Overseas Contingency Fund. The president sent up a defense budget that I supported. It had a number to it, and I thought the number was the right number, and we wrote the NDAA to that number. It just so happens, though, that number is greater than the budget caps that were imposed by the kind of the sequestration vote in August of 2011.
Right.
So, but it's the right number to defend our nation. So I think the way you need to get there, and the president and I agree with this, is, okay, the defense of the nation comes first. The defense of the nation requires more than the budget caps suggest, so let's adjust the budget caps to do this. That's what we should do. The Republicans in the Senate so far, they want to live under the budget caps, and instead of adjusting the budget caps, just throw $38 billion more into the slush fund, this kind of unaccountable slush fund. The president thinks that's a bad idea, and so do I. But I think the way you work that out is in the appropriations process. The defense authorizing bill, it's not an appropriations bill. It's just the line-item programmatic description of what we need to do on the defense side. And this bill is a very good bill, very strong for shipbuilding, very strong for ship repair, strong in terms of appropriate reforms, but not inappropriate reforms to military compensation and benefits. It's a very, very strong authorization. And if you ask the president, are there any policies in there that you don't like? The president would say, no, it's a good bill. The Congress did a good job on it. He just doesn't like using the slush fund to pay for it. And I agree. We put language into the defense authorizing bill saying, hey, we shouldn't be using the slush fund money. Appropriators and budgeteers strike a bipartisan budget deal to get rid of the caps and make an appropriate adjustment to the base budget of defense. Don't use the slush fund. Do real budgeting. That's in the authorizing act. And so my argument to the president is, Mr. President, we agree with you. The slush fund's a bad idea, but the bill that's coming to your desk even says that. And separately, we're now involved in a budget negotiation where we can work out the budget cap issue. So kind of a complicated explanation, but bottom line is, the defense authorizing bill, it's a good bill for our country. It's a good bill for Virginia. The weakness that the president points out, using the slush fund to pay for it, he's right on that. But we can fix that in the budget debate. We don't have to fix that in the authorizing bill.